Onions are one of the most familiar ingredients in the world. They're used almost every day in kitchens everywhere. Raw or cooked, sharp or sweet, onions feel simple and predictable. At first glance, an onion looks solid and clean, layer after layer neatly stacked. Its structure feels obvious, even boring, but that simplicity is an illusion. As the onion sample is placed onto the slide and gently pressed flat, its hidden nature begins to reveal itself. What seemed firm and uniform starts to separate. Clear zones appear, boundaries form. An onion is built around water, large amounts of it. This water is trapped inside countless microscopic compartments, held in place by delicate internal walls. Before magnification increases, the surface already looks unstable. Some areas spread easily, others resist and hold their shape. The onion is not just layers you can peel, it is a network, a system of compartments designed to store moisture, nutrients, and chemical compounds. These compounds are the reason onions make us cry. They are released only when the structure is broken. As the microscope comes into focus, the familiar image of an onion begins to fade. What remains is a hidden architecture shaped by growth, pressure, and chemistry. This is where the ordinary stops being ordinary, and where the onion becomes something completely unexpected. At 80 times magnification, the onion reveals a structure that feels unexpectedly precise. The field of view fills with long, rectangular cells arranged in tight, repeating rows. They resemble bricks in a wall, aligned side by side with almost no gaps between them. This regularity immediately stands out. Nothing looks random. Every cell follows the same general shape and orientation. The cell walls form clear, straight boundaries. They run parallel for long distances before gently shifting direction. This creates a subtle rhythm across the image. Inside each cell, the interior appears mostly transparent. Light passes through easily, giving the sample a soft, almost glowing appearance. Small, darker dots are visible within many cells, quietly resting in the center or slightly off to the side. At this level, the onion feels calm and controlled. There's no sense of chaos, only repetition, order, and balance. This is the foundation of the onion's structure. The reason its layers feel firm, yet flexible. Even at this first magnification, the onion already feels engineered rather than accidental. At 200 times magnification, the onion structure becomes more expressive. The cell walls appear thicker and more pronounced. Their edges are no longer just lines, but defined surfaces with visible depth. The boundaries between cells feel strong. They clearly separate one compartment from the next. Each cell exists as its own space, enclosed and protected. The darker internal spots become more noticeable. They sit quietly inside the cells, surrounded by pale, translucent material. This contrast gives the image a sense of internal organization. Some cells appear slightly compressed, others seem more open and relaxed. This variation suggests pressure differences that once existed inside the living tissue. At this magnification, the onion begins to feel dense. There is very little empty space. Everything is tightly packed, yet nothing looks damaged. This level helps explain why onions hold their shape so well. The strength is not in a single layer, but in the collective pressure of thousands of identical cells working together. At 800 times magnification, the onion transforms into a complex cellular landscape. The cell walls now dominate the image. They appear layered, textured, and uneven rather than smooth. Fine details emerge along the edges of the walls. Some sections look thicker and reinforced. Others appear thinner and slightly irregular. These imperfections make the structure feel alive rather than manufactured. Growth lines and subtle variations tell the story of how the onion developed over time. Inside the cells, the interior is no longer empty. A fine, granular texture becomes visible. Tiny particles are suspended throughout, giving the space a soft, cloudy appearance. The darker internal regions stand out more clearly. They feel anchored within the cell, surrounded by a lighter environment. At this scale, the onion no longer feels like a vegetable. It looks like a biological system built to manage water, pressure, and stability. Every wall, every compartment serves a purpose. This is the level where the onion's crispness begins to make sense. The resistance comes from structure, not hardness. At 2,000 times magnification, the onion becomes almost architectural. Cell walls fill much of the frame. Their layered construction is now clearly visible. The surfaces of the walls appear complex and textured. They are not flat. They show fine ridges, uneven thickness, and subtle irregularities shaped by growth. The boundaries between cells feel solid and deliberate. They form a rigid framework that once held immense internal pressure. This framework is what allowed the onion to store so much water without collapsing. Inside the cells, remaining material appears fragmented and delicate. Tiny particles and faint structures float in the background. Nothing here looks simple anymore. At this level, the onion no longer resembles food. It looks like a microscopic structure designed for containment and strength. A system built from repetition, balance, and controlled separation. This hidden world exists inside something we slice, fry, and eat without thinking. Yet it remains completely invisible in everyday life. If seeing the onion this way changed how you think about it, there are many more ordinary foods hiding extraordinary structures. Leave a comment with what you want to see next and subscribe to the channel to keep exploring what lives beneath the surface.